Right now, floating invisibly around you, there is water. I am not using a metaphor or a poetic figure of speech. The atmosphere contains 12,900 cubic kilometers of fresh water. To put that immense scale into perspective, it is a volume comparable to all the renewable liquid fresh water on every inhabited continent combined. It is literally in the air you are breathing right this very second. Yet, as natural gardeners, we are constantly conditioned to believe that water is a scarce commodity, something we must endlessly pay for, relying on a municipal grid that pumps our soil full of chemical treatments and chlorine. The system thrives on our dependence. Commercial versions of atmospheric water harvesting technology actually exist right now, and they sell for $2,000 to $30,000. The corporations pushing these massive humming machines want you to believe that pulling life-giving water from thin air requires their expensive patents, complex plumbing, and immense electrical power. They are selling you a beautifully packaged illusion. The foundational physics of extracting that pure moisture is exactly the same whether you spend $30,000 or merely $12,000. This is the story of atmospheric water harvesting, the absolute simplest technology you have never been taught, and exactly why the cheapest, most natural version of it has been quietly ignored by the people who profit from your water bill. We are going to bypass their industrial complex entirely today because nature has already given us the ultimate self-filling reservoir. You are about to discover the most liberating secret about water that the agricultural equipment industry prays you never learn, a profound truth that will shatter your reliance on the grid and transform the way you hydrate your garden forever. Long before anyone had electricity, modern engineering, or massive irrigation grids, ancient civilizations did not treat water as a scarce commodity to be bought and sold. They treated it as an abundant gift that the atmosphere simply gives you, provided you know exactly how to ask. We can look back to the majestic Inca Empire, a civilization that managed to sustain entire sprawling cities built high above the rain line. They achieved this magnificent feat by collecting dew and channeling it directly into their cisterns, using ingenious fog fences stretched across mountain ridges to intercept the moisture from thick clouds rolling through. There were no pumps, no moving parts, and absolutely no monthly water bills. They relied purely on a deep, intimate understanding of how water naturally behaves in the environment. But as time marched on, modern society decided that bigger, heavier, and more complicated was somehow better. Enter the sheer arrogance of early 20th century engineering. In the 1930s, a Belgian engineer named Achilles Knappen decided to conquer atmospheric water by building a massive 14-meter-tall stone tower in Provence, France. He constructed walls an incredible 3 meters thick, riddled them with air vents, and placed a concrete column studded with slate inside to maximize the condensation surface area. The theory sounded elegantly flawless on paper. He firmly believed the immense structure would cool overnight, allowing warm, humid daytime air to enter, condense on the cool internal surfaces, and drip gracefully down into collection basins. Today, that monumental tower still stands in absolute ruins, a spectacular and profoundly expensive failure that produced only a few pitiful liters of water per day. The exact reason it failed provides the single most important lesson for any natural gardener trying to build a self-sustaining system. High-mass structures completely fail because you simply cannot shed enough heat overnight from massive masonry. The thermal inertia is just too great, meaning the heavy stone absorbs the intense heat of the sun all day long and barely manages to cool down by morning. Knappen's colossal monument teaches us a vital truth about working alongside the earth. Trying to brute force nature with massive, expensive, and heavy construction is a foolish errand. To truly harness the invisible ocean floating right above our garden beds, we must deliberately unlearn this modern instinct to build imposing fortresses and instead embrace a radically different, almost painfully simple approach that the industrial giants hope we never figure out. While the monument builders were stacking thick stones and failing spectacularly, a brilliant German chemist named Wolf Klaffake quietly discovered the real secret in the 1920s and 30s. He completely overturned the arrogant engineering of his time by realizing you absolutely do not need imposing concrete monuments to harvest the sky. Instead, he simply cleared and smoothed mountain slopes, shading them with lightweight canopies. At night, those slopes cooled rapidly, and during the day, copious amounts of moisture collected on the cool surface beneath the shade. Klappake proved a profound truth that changes everything for our gardens. Simplicity always beats complexity. The thinner and lighter the surface, the faster it loses heat, and the more brilliantly it performs. This insight is the absolute foundation of every practical, affordable water harvesting system, and it is the exact truth the commercial industry desperately prefers you never internalize because it means you will never need their overpriced products. To master this for your own backyard, you only need to understand one beautifully simple scientific concept, the dew point. All air contains water vapor, and the dew point is simply the exact temperature at which that air becomes fully saturated, forcing water to condense out onto any available surface. For every single degree Celsius of difference between the dew point and the air temperature, relative humidity shifts by roughly 5%. If you reverse that principle and cool a surface just a few degrees below the dew point, pure water literally appears out of nowhere. You see this precise thermodynamic miracle every single morning when dew magically forms on your car windshield overnight. That is not an accident of nature. It is pure, predictable physics that you will exploit using extremely cheap materials from a local hardware store to hydrate your natural garden absolutely free. Now we bring this exact science directly into your own backyard to build our $12 weapon against the industrial water grid. You will construct a radiative dew condenser, an incredibly simple and rebellious trap that weaponizes the night sky to pull pure moisture right out of thin air. You only need a thin polyethylene or metal sheet for the condenser surface, some polystyrene foam insulation for the backing, a simple frame built from scrap wood or pipe, and a basic collection gutter. You will mount that extremely thin sheet onto your frame at a strict 30-degree angle. This specific angle is absolutely critical because it allows the perfectly formed water droplets to slide effortlessly down the slope into your collection trough instead of pooling and evaporating when the morning sun hits. You must elevate the entire structure 2 to 3 feet above the soil. The earth naturally holds an immense amount of thermal energy, and if your condenser sits too close to the ground, it will absorb that radiant warmth from below and completely ruin the delicate condensation process. By lifting the frame up and packing the back tightly with foam insulation, you effectively cut off the ground heat entirely. When the sun sets, your thin surface rapidly radiates its heat directly into the freezing vacuum of the cold night sky. With absolutely zero energy input, no noisy pumps, and no expensive grid connections, the surface temperature plummets 5 to 15 degrees below the ambient air temperature. It violently crosses that magical threshold of the dew point we just talked about, and suddenly, the atmospheric ocean invisible above your garden begins to surrender its bounty. Crystal clear water condenses directly onto your plastic sheet, runs down the gentle slope into the gutter, and fills your collection container while you are fast asleep in your bed. A perfectly positioned system exactly like this will reliably produce around 0.3 to 0.6 of a liter of pristine water per square meter every single night under favorable conditions. This is the ultimate quiet defiance against a massive commercial system that endlessly demands you pay for every single drop of your garden's lifeblood. When the sun finally rises over your vibrant garden and your nocturnal radiative condenser goes to sleep, our quiet rebellion against the municipal water grid absolutely does not stop. We are going to seamlessly transition to a daytime solution that costs a mere $5 to construct, but feels like absolute magic from the earth itself. You are going to build a completely passive solar still that weaponizes the brutal daytime heat to your ultimate advantage. Simply dig a pit in your soil about 16 inches wide and 12 inches deep, and place a small collection container right at the absolute bottom center. You then stretch a sheet of clear plastic tightly over the opening, meticulously sealing the outer edges with heavy dirt and rocks so no air can escape. Finally, place a single small stone directly in the middle of the plastic so the weight forms a perfect inverted cone pointing straight down into your waiting container. As the fierce solar heat mercilessly bakes the earth inside that sealed chamber, it forcefully evaporates the hidden ground moisture trapped in the soil. That warm, invisible vapor rapidly rises, hits the cooler underside of your plastic sheeting, and violently condenses into heavy water droplets that have nowhere to go but down the steep slope of your cone, dripping steadily into your hidden reservoir. Here is the most magnificent, liberating part of this entire mechanism. You can pour completely unusable, dirty, salty, or entirely contaminated water directly into the dirt of that pit to dramatically increase your daily yield. Because this incredible trap purifies the liquid entirely through the natural process of evaporation and condensation, leaving all heavy metals and toxins behind in the dirt. The final output dripping into your cup is pure, unadulterated, distilled water. This pristine, chemical-free hydration is an absolute miracle for your most delicate, sensitive seedlings that would normally burn, wither, or suffer under the harsh chlorine of municipal tap water. A single tiny pit engineered this way will reliably yield between 100 and 150 milliliters of flawless water every single day. If your garden demands more, you simply dig more holes, because this entire beautifully natural system scales perfectly linearly across your property. We are literally turning the dry dirt beneath our feet into an endless, self-purifying fountain. While we have successfully conquered the night sky with our radiative condenser and harnessed the brutal daytime sun with our solar still, there is a third incredibly powerful natural mechanism floating right through your garden that the municipal water grid cannot tax, meter, or control. We are going to become fog stealers, taking a brilliant page directly from the ultimate survival masters of the natural world. Nature absolutely solved this complex engineering problem millions of years before any human corporation even attempted to patent it and sell it back to us. Consider the magnificent Namib desert fog basking beetle, a tiny creature that survives in one of the absolute driest, most unforgiving places on Earth simply by standing at a precise 23-degree angle facing directly into the fog wind. Its shell is an evolutionary marvel covered in alternating hydrophilic bumps that magnetically attract ambient water and hydrophobic troughs that seamlessly channel those heavy, life-saving droplets straight down toward its mouth. Brilliant researchers at MIT have completely mimicked this ancient biological design with textured surfaces that dramatically outperform simple netting. And it is not just tiny insects pulling off this miracle. The towering ancient redwood forests survive and thrive on severely limited rainfall purely because thick coastal fog condenses on their millions of tiny needles and drips relentlessly down into their massive root systems, functioning as a colossal natural fog collector operating silently at the scale of an entire ecosystem. You can easily replicate this profound biological magic in your own backyard for merely $8 to $12. All you have to do is stretch a piece of simple shade cloth or fine mesh netting completely vertically between two sturdy poles, placing it directly perpendicular to the prevailing wind of your property. You do not even need the surface to drop below the dew point for this to work perfectly. As the wind-driven fog and heavy morning mist roll through your garden, the mesh physically intercepts and captures those suspended water droplets right out of the moving air. Those microscopic droplets quickly coalesce on the fine filaments, becoming heavy enough to run straight down into a simple trough or gutter you have mounted securely along the bottom edge. This is exactly how you weaponize the very breeze that sweeps across your land, capturing pure hydration that was just passing through and feeding it directly back into your living soil without ever turning on a tap. If you are still sitting there chained to your municipal water meter, wondering if this invisible ocean of hydration is just some theoretical fantasy pushed by a rebellious gardener, let us completely smash those lingering doubts with undeniable hard mathematical proof from the harshest environments on Earth. The industrial agricultural complex desperately loves to whisper that these natural systems are unproven or simply cannot produce enough volume to matter. But the staggering reality unfolding right now tells a wildly different and liberating story. Consider a magnificent 550 square meter installation positioned in the brutal, arid climate of northwest India, which effortlessly pulls roughly 9,000 liters of pure water every single year directly out of thin air to supply an entire school. That is not an academic hypothesis. That is a life-changing reality, operating completely off the grid and bypassing the massive water conglomerates entirely. Or look deep into the parched mountains of Chile, where a brilliant project in 1987 utilized mere 48 square meter nets to physically rip enough moisture out of the passing fog to easily sustain 300 local villagers. The global scientific community knows exactly how incredibly powerful this natural mechanism is, with a massive 2021 study in the journal Nature proving mathematically that atmospheric water harvesters hold the staggering potential to provide safe, reliable drinking water to over 1 billion people globally. Even the most elite engineering institutions are quietly scrambling to master what nature already perfected, with brilliant researchers at MIT building a revolutionary device in 2024 using zeolite-coated copper fins that miraculously yields nearly 6 liters of water per day for every single kilogram of material used. They are pouring immense funding into researching the exact same natural thermodynamic principles you can practically exploit with a $12 piece of plastic in your own backyard right this very moment. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming and completely bulletproof, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the atmosphere is frantically trying to give us all the clean, unchlorinated water our natural gardens could ever need. If only we have the courage to step outside their broken system and build the simple traps to catch it. When we finally disconnect the hose and stop paying for the privilege of poisoning our own land, we step into the true heart of a natural garden. Every single time you turn on that municipal tap, you are flooding your carefully cultivated, living soil with heavily treated water packed with chlorine, chloramine, and industrial chemical additives. Those municipal chemicals are specifically engineered by the city to kill organic bacteria in the pipes, which means you are systematically carpet bombing the delicate mycorrhizal fungi and beneficial microbes that your plants desperately rely on to thrive. We will end that cycle of destruction today by combining the incredibly simple mechanisms we just discussed into one master off-grid hydration station. The absolute smartest approach is to seamlessly combine all three of these natural systems to capture pure moisture around the clock. You will place your angled radiative dew condensers directly over your main reservoir barrels to harvest the freezing night sky. When the hot sun rises, your underground solar stills will already be baking the earth, actively purifying hidden ground moisture into flawless distilled drops for your most sensitive, demanding seedlings. Meanwhile, your vertical mesh nets will stand like silent, towering sentinels across the natural breezeways of your property, endlessly stripping the morning mist bare as the wind pushes it through. This is exactly how you build a completely closed, self-sustaining ecosystem that operates on the exact same thermodynamic physics, keeping ancient, towering forests alive. You must think of this incredible setup as your ultimate supplemental garden irrigation system, perfectly tailored for genuine off-grid living and absolute agricultural independence. You are no longer just a passive consumer relying on a fragile, chemical-laden municipal pipe. You are a sovereign creator tapping directly into the invisible ocean above your head to feed your soil the purest, most biologically compatible hydration on Earth, completely free of charge. Now let us speak the absolute unfiltered truth about the natural physics governing our rebellion, because understanding the exact parameters of your environment is the only way you will master this ancient technology. The industrial giants want you to believe that if a system does not violently blast thousands of gallons on demand, it is somehow a complete failure, but we know better. To force the atmosphere to surrender its hidden ocean, you will operate your systems where the relative humidity sits above 30% and the ambient temperature remains above 18 degrees Celsius. These are not flaws or weaknesses. They are the immutable laws of thermodynamics that you will fiercely exploit to your ultimate advantage. Your radiative condensers will actively harvest the freezing night, your solar stills will relentlessly conquer the boiling day, and your vertical mesh nets will violently strip the passing wind of its heavy morning fog. When you respect these natural cycles and build exactly as I have instructed, you will absolutely harvest pure water. You must also understand that while this moisture is infinitely better for your living soil than chlorinated municipal sludge, raw atmospheric dew and mist will sometimes carry airborne dust or natural environmental contaminants. Therefore, if you intend to drink this glorious harvest yourself, you will simply run it through a basic biological filter or treat it first. A single $12 unit will not magically replace the massive, high-pressure municipal mainline overnight, and you must never expect it to. You will treat this as your ultimate supplemental irrigation, the vital emergency preparedness system, and the absolute proof of concept for your off-grid living. You will build one unit this very weekend, prove the undeniable physics in your own backyard, and then you will rapidly scale it up. Because the geometry of these traps scales perfectly linearly, if you demand 10 times the water for your expanding garden beds, you simply build 10 times the surface area. You will expand your silent network unit by unit, creating an unstoppable, decentralized grid that permanently transforms your entire property into a self-hydrating fortress of natural abundance. We have completely unraveled the grand illusion, and you now possess the exact blueprint to free your garden from the industrial water grid forever. The physics governing this liberation are absolutely not complicated. When you simply cool a surface below the dew point, pure water miraculously and inevitably appears. Engineers from the ancient Incas, all the way to modern researchers at MIT, have been successfully extracting this invisible ocean for centuries. For a mere $12 and a single afternoon of your time, you will build a flawlessly working system that physically pulls life-giving water right from thin air. You will do this with absolutely zero electricity, zero complicated plumbing, and zero moving parts to break down. You are wielding the exact same thermodynamic principles that sustained majestic ancient cities against the harshest climates on Earth. Right now, the commercial industry charges thousands of dollars for heavy, humming devices built entirely on this exact same physics. Yet, the raw materials you actually need to achieve this miracle cost almost nothing at all. This profound, world-changing knowledge has been publicly available to humanity for well over 100 years. The question for us as natural gardeners was never whether this incredible atmospheric harvesting actually works. The real, terrifying question you must ask yourself right now is exactly why this empowering knowledge mysteriously disappeared from common education. Who truly benefits from making absolutely sure you never learn how beautifully simple it really is to capture your own hydration? Who builds their vast corporate empires by ensuring you remain forever chained to a municipal pipe, forced to pay endlessly for every single chemical-laced drop that touches your living soil? You will not be their passive consumer any longer. You will step out into your garden tomorrow morning. You will construct your very first radiative condenser, and you will finally take your ultimate power back from the grid.